So let's start with the prayers. Palden Save Lama Rinpoche Dage Jivo Pende Den Shula Karen Chempa Gone Jesunte Kusun Tujing Adu Sadu Sa Sanje Chedang Soji Chonam La Shangju Badu Dane Chapsuji Dagi Jinso Jibe Sunam Jin Drola Penje Sanje Drupasho Sanje Chudang Soji Chonam La Shangju Badu Dane Chapsuji Dagi Jinso Jibe Sunam Jin Drola Penje Sanje Drupasho Sanje Chudang Soji Chonam La Shangju Badu Dane Chapsuji Dagi Jinso Jibe Sunam Jin Drola Penje Sanje Drupasho Semchen Tamje Deva Dang Deve Judan Den Pa Jujik Dunga Dan Dunga Ji Judan Dalwa Jujik Dungal me pe deva dampa dang mindal wa juji Nyering cha dan dan dalwe tanyam chen pola ne pa jujik Sem chen tam je deva dan deve judan den pa jujik Dunga dan dunga je judan dalwa jujik Dunga me pe deva dampa dang mindal wa jujik Nyering cha dan dan dalwe tonyam chen pola ne pa jujik Semchen tamje deva dang deve judan den pa jujik Dunga dan dunga jin judan dalwa jujik Dunga me pe deva dang mindal wa jujik Nyering cha dan dan dalwe tanyam tempola ne pa jujik. So please let's sit for a few moments and you just put yourself in the right motivation, settle in for the day of study, teachings, and develop the motivation that you want to be focused for this period. You want to be focused, you want to not be a pot upside down, not a pot with poison, not be distracted inwardly, not be distracted outwardly. So being distracted inwardly means being distracted inwardly means you are not sort of caught into any daydreams, any residues, memories. Please just sit down. Yeah. Residues from the day. So try to settle with that. So you remember why you are studying this text, to come to understand the Dharma deeper so that it can also help you on your path, on your own path. So let's continue on the text. That was a very brief settling in. And we will pick it up where we left last time. But first I want to just give a little summary of what we've done. So on this text by Nagarjuna's text, which really is, you could say, essentially is about the 6 perfections, which is the path of all the great bodhisattvas, Buddhas and bodhisattvas. They are applying themselves, practicing the 6 perfections. 6 perfections of generosity, right conduct, patience, diligence, meditation and wisdom. So Nagarjuna talks in great depth to this king that he met, and he's giving this advice through a letter to a king that was a friend of his, a letter to a friend, a king who was a very busy person, who was a very preoccupied person with lots and lots of responsibilities and activities and daily changes and ups and downs and demands and hopes and disappointments and losses and gains. So very busy life that I think we can all relate to in the 21st century. Being busy. We are busier than ever. So you should all relate to this text as this is Nagarjuna's advice to you. Directly to you. Of course he didn't, all the teachings of the great masters are for all beings. At different times, they are particularly relevant, more than others maybe, or to different groups of people, they're more relevant than others. But I think we can relate to this busyness of having to juggle many responsibilities, family responsibilities, work responsibilities, financial responsibilities, your social responsibilities, social relationships, trying to live a good life and trying to balance all of that is not easy. And so Nagarjuna gives this advice to the king, as we assume the king was a very spiritual person. He was a Buddhist practitioner. They are obviously given to someone who was very much on the path. So this is also all of you, all of us here. We are, so in that same way it relates to all of us, even though the teachings were given 2,000 years ago. It sounds like such a long time, 2,000 years. 2,000 years ago. But just look at how quickly time goes. 1 month to the next. Last time you were here till now. How fast time moves. 1 week, 1 day. It's like already another week has come around, already another year has come around, another generation is about to, take their place in society. So continuously this movement and change and time goes so fast. So in that bigger picture, actually 2,000 years is not that big. You think of the human race. The scientists, they look back and they say, we found the very, very first drawing of that was made by humans at that time. But To be honest, I think it was just because they happened to find that. We don't know if that was the first. Humanity goes, it's like samsara is endless, isn't it? So from that point of view, time goes very, very quickly. And I'm sort of saying this because we should relate to the text as very new and relevant to us. But of course, language, sometimes we might find we have to interpret it. So the teaching in terms of what to keep in mind. First, it talks about faith and refuge, taking refuge. Talks about, then goes into virtue and generosity and ethics. So the first aspects of the 6 perfections. How to live our life. This is kind of the Noble Eightfold Path. How to live our life according to ethics, according to right speech, right action, right mindfulness, right concentration, right view. All of that is like the foundation for our practice. Discipline. He says it's like the base of the earth. Without the base of the earth, without some foundation, our spiritual path is not very strong, without a strong foundation. So he talks about having the right conduct, pure conduct according to ethics, discipline, generosity. And then he gives a more detailed explanation of the 6 perfections. Again, talks about generosity, importance of showing respect to parents, teachers, all those who have helped us throughout our life. Again, more detailed explanation of ethics, what to avoid. And talked about a lot of these aspects of what to give up in terms of what is right discipline, what is right and what is incompatible with right conduct. Because if we want to attain peace of mind, he's telling the king, if you want to develop, if you want to be happy, if you want to live a good life, you need to be a good person. You need to be kind to your subjects. You need to be generous. You need to look after people. You need to not only think of yourself, don't be selfish. So there are certain things you need to give up. Laziness, arrogance, stinginess, hate and pride, all of that. So he says, ethics of restraints, ethics of virtue. So we have to cultivate being careful. He's telling this to the king, but of course it relates to all of us. How we live our life in terms of all the actions throughout the day. We try our best. Not always easy, is it? To live a life without conflict, a life without, that life that's smooth and, pure, perfect. But we try our best to cultivate carefulness, is what he is recommending. We need to be careful, we need to cultivate mindfulness and carefulness in all of our activities. And he gives examples of that. And he goes on to talk about patience, giving up anger. Because if we can give up anger, these two go together, patience and giving up anger. Anger and patience are mutually exclusive. We cannot maintain our righteous anger and at the same time develop patience. We need to give up anger and nurture patience, nurture if we can give up also resentment, he talks about resentment, then we will nurture patience. And he talks about mental attitude, our speech, what to avoid in terms of that, how to practice patience in speech and in mind. And then he goes on to talk about being diligent, like we know because many of you have already studied 6 perfections, because they keep coming back again and again, isn't it? 6 perfections. Which is good because we really come to learn how to become more skillful in applying them. And we know that from those past teachings also, diligence is like the energy, it's like the effort, it's like the fuel that makes everything else go forward, move forward. Without diligence, we don't get very far in our practice, in our meditation, in whatever we're trying to accomplish. We have to really make an effort and apply ourselves. It's like having, usually I say, like having a very big, fancy car, but without the engine and without the fuel in the engine, we can't get anywhere. So the diligence and effort is like the fuel. And so here, Nagarjuna is advising the king, saying, be diligent in virtue, be diligent in giving up all the things that get in the way and that are obstacles to a positive and good life. And then he goes on to talk about meditation, meditative concentration. And really the way he does that is by looking at all of the things that are obstacles to meditation, obstacles to a stable mind. So he advises the king on what to give up, and a lot of it he says, he starts off with talking about how to eliminate desire, craving, selfishness. And for several verses he goes on to talk about desire for a partner and what is the right partner, what is in terms of relationships. And then he goes on to talk about turning away from the 8 worldly concerns, praise, looking for respect, looking for praise, looking for pleasure, looking for bliss, or looking for kind words, and trying to avoid the opposites. So how, like giving up this chasing, constant chasing for those running away from the others. And he talks about giving up, like based on those 8 worldly actions. He says a lot of negative actions are a result of it. And he says we need to be aware of how being involved with these 8 worldly concerns, how they spur on negative actions by chasing after certain aspects, continuously praise, pleasure, and by trying to avoid blame and abuse and loss, always chasing after gain, how that our mind is constantly disturbed. So we need to develop a more stable mind of equanimity that is not so affected by loss and gain, affected by praise and blame. And he also talks about the negative actions that result from us being involved with the 8 worldly actions. So we can see that this is something we don't just need to learn and to remember, but we need to observe it in ourselves. So we should relate to the text in that way of saying, how is my life ruled by the 8 worldly concerns? From what I remember, we also did meditate on the 8 worldly concerns. We've meditated on the faults of anger, benefits of patience, consequences of desire, and the benefits of contentment. Consequences of laziness, lack of diligence, benefits of diligence. And last time we meditated or we reflected on the 8 worldly concerns. And we also reflected on the 4 immeasurables. So this is kind of like reminding you. So then Nagarjuna explains, why do we need to give up negative actions? And talking about the distractions. He's really talking about how all of these different aspects are such a distraction for us developing a stable mind. So he talks about the distractions by chasing after wealth. And how that distraction or certain activities, they hinder our attainment of what he calls superior wealth, peace of mind. So all this, and this is all related to, you could say, the 8 worldly dharmas. He talks about the antidotes and the benefits of using the antidotes, qualities of contentment, and the disadvantages of not applying antidotes to distraction, and especially distraction by chasing after gain and wealth. Distraction by pleasure, how we need to give up attachments to... No, he's not saying give up pleasure, he's saying give up grasping and attachment, so that we don't get so stuck, and so that we can develop this inner peace. Then he talks about giving up attachment to food. He says attachment can have many different forms. Attachment to partner, attachment to food, attachment to sleep, regulating sleep. So he's giving very detailed advice to the king, how to live a good life, which we can easily translate into our own living situations and see how sleep affects us. If we don't have a good sleep last night, we're not focused the next day, we feel tired, we feel moody, we feel distracted. How all these different aspects, if they take over our mind, they make it difficult for us to settle in and be content. So that's why he's giving the king these advice, because of course the king has lots and lots of opportunities for distraction in all these areas. Then the last one we went through was the 4 immeasurables, the thoughts of the reflection and the 4 immeasurables as a support for our concentration and support for our mental stability. So developing loving kindness, compassion, joy, impartiality. And we did a guided meditation on that. So that's really where we ended last time. Does that all ring a bell? It all comes back to you? So today we're continuing in verse 41. And so just to remind you, we are studying this text together. It's not like I am really that learned in all of some of these topics. I have received teachings on it, but that doesn't really always mean a lot. But so we study it, we'll continue together. And actually I wanted to tell you that because we are going quite slow, I have added some more dates to this course. So to me it makes sense to go slower and to stick with the text until we've finished, rather than ending it without finishing it and then starting a new text. So there are new, of course I realize that some of you, those dates may not suit you. It is, of course, you are free to attend or not attend as you wish and as you can, but there are now dates up until in the autumn. They don't include you. There's no dates in April. There's no teaching in April. Like you had the dates up until March. So in April anyway, it wasn't possible. So then there's no teaching in April, but then from June, April, May, June onwards, there are teachings, but there's also no teaching in July, and in August and July it's because Lama Yeshe is here for 2 weekends. I thought that would be too much for all of you. And in August we are closed most of the time, so then in September onwards, so please just have a look on the website. That will make it clear to you, and you can book for whatever you are able to book for. So we'll continue, and we'll just go, and we'll go at a slow pace, because this coming point, some of you say this really more relates to wisdom. Still meditation, continued meditation, post-meditation, verse 41 and verse onwards, but then it also starts to go into the last of the 6 perfections of wisdom, which is quite, not so easy. So, yeah, the last one was then the cultivating loving kindness, compassion, joy, impartiality. Talking about how to meditate on these 4 boundless qualities in relation to friends, enemies, and those who are neutral to us. And it says then, should you not attain the higher state, at least you will find bliss in Brahma's world. So he's really saying that these meditations on the 4 immeasurables, the result of them is very, very high, is very deep and very vast. And it's the essence of the Bodhisattva path, is meditating on loving kindness and compassion. It's bodhicitta. But then he goes on to say, even if you do not attain the higher state of nirvana immediately, then you will gain the happiness of the first Brahma world. So then the next verse 41, it talks about this practice, meditating on the 4 samadhis. So he says, the 4 samadhis, which in turn discard pursuit of pleasure, joy and bliss and pain, will lead to fortune equal to the gods, in Brahma, in light, great virtue, or great fruit. So these are different forms of absorptions. These 4 meditations, he's not really talking about our usual form of shine. He's talking about when you really have an ability to settle the mind. This first, the 4 samadhis. Samadhi is a great level of absorption. And he says, so these 4 samadhis are stages and levels of absorption and level of concentration that become finer and finer and finer and more subtle. And you're dealing with the subtler and subtler and subtler levels of obscuration to realization. He's saying, if you don't reach the higher state of nirvana. So the reason we don't reach the higher state of nirvana is because they're still coarser and less coarse and less coarse and more subtle and more subtle obscurations, ego clinging, afflictions, karma that sort of obscure the Buddha nature and the nature of mind. So these 4 samadhis, he's saying actually the first concentration here, he says it's the antidote to the it's used to abandon the pursuit of pleasure, the first concentration. And the antidote is discursive thinking and subtle analysis, like examination, investigation of the mind. So today we'll do a little bit of guided reflection, but not right with this samadhi here. Like we're not going into samadhi. We're not entering samadhi, but we will do later some reflection on the 5 skandhas, the 5 aggregates, elements. So, but he's saying that the investigation and examination are the antidotes to give up grasping, attachment to pleasure, yearning for pleasure, and wanting to get rid of anything that gets in the way of pleasure. If there's anything that irritates us, but this is on a deeper level, on a much more subtle level. He says the joy and bliss that arise from solitude, this itself can give rise to attachment. So at some point one needs to give up that attachment as well. I think that we don't need to worry about that. I think if we feel that we have distractions in meditation, we are not, it's not our greatest attachment. We are always warned about having attachment to experiences, clinging to experiences. But I think the attachments we need to work on are much more local than all of the previous that he mentioned. Attachment to food, attachment to company, attachment to relationship, to partners, to sleep, to various pleasurable sensations that we have in life. So there's no need to worry that we are going to get too attached to our meditation. But I wanted to explain a little bit more about this. It is interesting, but what is in another commentary, it talks about these levels of, it's really talking about the experiences. It says the subtle mental happiness, like the feeling you have in deep meditation of shamatha. It's talking here about 4 levels or realms of these 4 levels of samadhis relate to 4 levels of deities, long life deities. That is part of the form realm, formless realms. He says there, it is form realm, it's not the desire realm. So it's actually this Brahma, light, great virtue and great fruit that he mentions in the last sentence. This is a God realm or a form realm of the deities that one would attain if one, after death, if one has great attachment to the samadhi, one can be reborn in this God realm, where it says their bodies are very subtle, with a nature like light. They don't have to eat or eliminate waste. They do not crave sex. They have mental enjoyment rather than sensual enjoyment. Their subtle mental happiness, like I said, is like the deep meditation of shamatha. So these deities do not have ordinary physical or mental suffering for as long as they live. They do not have ordinary gross suffering like we do. However, they do have suffering of transformation and suffering created by causes and conditions. So their life is conditioned. So they have it is not deities. It is not a level of realization that is beyond causes and condition. They are born there as a result of powerful meditative practices and merit. You may have heard of this before, that one can, through due to attachment to our meditation or absorptions, you could be reborn in this realm, God realm, and sort of be stuck there a little bit. So this is an existence that is much more subtle, much more refined than ours. But when the karma is used up, they will be reborn somewhere else. But they do not have in this sort of form realm. It's not the desire realm when we talk about the 6 realms. It's not the God realm of the six realms. It's a form realm. And they don't have anger, they don't have gross desire, but they still have subtle desire. And they're still subject to subtle suffering and under the power of karma. But so they're not completely free. That's what it's describing here. But that is the result of the first samadhi, this first absorption. And then he goes on to say that I wanted to tell the others are actually, these other 3 absorptions are then not experienced within the desire realm. sorry, I have to find this. There were certain points I wrote, marked to read out to you. But he says, anyway, so each of these aspects of samadhi, or called jhanas, they have subtle and more coarse stages. They have a preparatory stage, they have an actual stage, and when one is complete, when all of the afflictions are removed in that, both in the preparatory, the actual stage of that samadhi, then you reach you go on to the next one. So it says, for example, in your current human life, you can do this meditation practice to eliminate desire. You can do meditation practice to eliminate your desire for the desire realm and develop a longing for the first jhana, samadhi. And if you succeed in that practice, you have entered the preparatory stage of the first samadhi, and after you die, your rebirth in the first samadhi will be the actual stage. So he's saying that as a human being, during our meditation, we can go through the preparatory stage, the first stage of the first samadhi or the first jhana, of this first absorption. And then at the time of death, we will enter the actual stage of that absorption. So we'll be born into the form realm. I'm not sure if this is very useful, what I'm telling you. But it is mentioned in this verse, of course. He says the first, but so all the following is really then not happening now, not happening here now. And so it's showing us why we need to develop non-attachment, non-grasping. We need to develop renunciation and not just be meditating for the sake of developing peace or developing a pleasant state of mind, like a sort of selfish grasping. Selfish grasping will be there for a long time to a certain extent, but we need to be aware of that it has to be given up gradually along the way, and we need to work on that. So being aware of the importance of developing genuine renunciation that is gives up holding on to a self, belief in an I. So for all of the second, third and fourth jhanas, then you compare the coarseness and hindrances of the previous jhana to the better situation on the next jhana. Then you move on and you go through the four jhanas. So that's what it's describing here, that you give up, you discard the pursuit of pleasure, joy, bliss and pain. So the second jhana is the antidote is a very clear mind, and then you have to, it's a mind that's used to analysis and examination in the previous one, and the joy and bliss that come from concentration, so you give that up. And then the third one, you develop even stronger mindfulness, vigilance, stability of mind, to abandon any joy, bliss, or attachment to joy, bliss in the previous. And in the fourth, you have again, you develop perfect mindfulness, evenness of mind, and again you completely eliminate attachment to bliss and suffering or neutrality of feeling, or any form of attachment whatsoever. So it says that through this meditating on these four samadhis, Nagarjuna says one attains a fortunate rebirth. So that, and if we can work through all of these, maybe something that corresponds to the levels of the gods. It says it will lead to a fortune equal to the gods of Brahma. But it is still called the mundane path, and it is temporary, but because it doesn't remove all the afflictions. Now that, hopefully that made sense. So then he goes on to talk about, in verse 42, it's really about post-meditation, positive and negative actions, and about relation to understanding of karma. So he's explaining how negative actions weigh us down, positive actions uplift us on the path. Nagarjuna to the king, so advised to really accept the importance of wholesome, taking on wholesome actions and giving up negative actions. So he says here, verse 42, great good and evil or negative actions are 5 kinds, determined by their constancy, their seal, their lack of counter-agent, their perfect fields. So strive in this respect to practice good. So they're a little bit obscure, the verses, aren't they, when you read them like this? So here, it's explained as relating to post-meditation, how important it is to be aware of the consequences of our actions, positive actions, negative actions, and karma. Because of course, karma has such a huge influence on our path forward. And so here he's saying that, in a way he's saying that, well, if we didn't manage to be reborn in the pure realms, or if we did not manage to attain nirvana, we can, through understanding of karma, we can direct our future through our actions. We can have control of our future by how we live our life through our actions, through positive actions. We can control it through either we do negative deeds or positive deeds. Like someone like the king would have, his actions would have great consequences, because it would have consequences on many, many people. As a king, whatever he decided, whatever laws he made, whatever laws he enforced would have consequences very widely on the subjects in his kingdom. So here, Nagarjuna is explaining to the king that, your actions be aware that your actions will determine your future rebirth, your future life, your future happiness. And that you have actually ways of controlling that yourself by understanding karma. So this here he's saying the importance or the strength of our actions are determined by these 5 things, 5 aspects, by their constancy, so their frequency, how often we do what we are doing. And this it applies both to, he says, to negative actions and to positive actions. So these 5 qualities, they determine the strength of our actions, both good and bad. And so if we understand these 5 and are aware of these 5 qualities, then we can ourselves, put them into actions, put them into practice in a positive way for the benefit of ourselves and others. And we can be aware that we should be very careful not to, put them into practice in a negative way. So we might think that if we just meditate, that's enough. But if we study, we see that ethics and actions, virtue, merit is very, very important. And this has got to do with ethics and virtue. So in terms of how often we put actions into the frequency is the first one. The motivation is the second one. The zeal. Zeal, you say zeal? The motivation, or the way that we place our mind through our action. The third one is whether we engage an antidote or not. Says the lack of counter agent is the antidote. And then the fields, like the objects of our actions, what our actions are directed towards, who our actions are directed towards. That is the fourth and the fifth. So that means ordinary beings is one, and Buddhas, or you could say Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, those of respect, or you say the field of accumulation of merit. Normally it's called the field of accumulation of merit. And that is generally said to be those of respect, and those of compassion, and then those of devotion. So that means all the teachers, the bodhisattvas, Buddhas, great beings. So that's the perfect fields, fourth and fifth. So frequency, how there's a regularity with which we put something into action. How often are we generous? How often are we patient? Whether it's minor actions or not, but if we do something constantly, it makes the consequences much stronger. So if we think of a dripping faucet, a dripping tap, drop, drip, 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 eventually it will fill a bucket, eventually something comes of it. In the same way, if we continuously do a positive action, it will have a strong result. If we continuously do a negative action, it will have a strong result. Second one is it's a zeal, but it's explained more as a motivation, the thought and the attitude behind our action. So if we're motivated by anger, for example, if we're motivated by any of the mental negative emotions, afflictions in the particular action, where that makes that action, that determines that action, whether it's negative or positive to a big degree. If you're motivated by anger, or if you're motivated by faith and compassion, so it also can be mixed. If you do something good, but your positive motivation is weak, then it makes it a weak action. And the other way, if a small action done with a very strong motivation makes it a powerful action. So even if it's just giving a tiny little, they says like some children gave a handful of sand to the Buddha, and that was a great merit. Or if you give a handful or a small amount of food to a beggar, but you have a very, very strong motivation, it makes it into a very powerful, positive action. Similarly, a very small negative action with a very powerful motivation, powerful negative motivation, will make it a very powerful action. Is what he's describing here. So the point of this is that if we know this, Nagarjuna is saying to the king, please be aware of this, because you can take your life in your own hands. This is very good and very useful knowledge I'm passing on to you, because if you are aware of this, you have all of the means to determine your future happiness and to avoid your future unhappiness. So the frequency, the motivation. The third one, it says the antidote, or says here the lack of counter agent. counteragents, just the translation means antidote. I think we more often say antidote. Application, it refers to whether there is an application or a non-application of an antidote when we have done something negative. And so if we have done something negative, we recognize it was not a good thing to do, then you regret having done it and you want to purify it. So then a desire to purify your negative action will weaken that the consequences, the karma. And it's explained that even a small negative action becomes heavy karma if you are happy about what you have done. And you have no wish to apply an antidote. And so the opposite is also true for virtue, saying if you regret having done something positive, something virtuous, it weakens the virtue of that action. This third one is the antidote. And then the fourth and the fifth is the object of our actions and our motivation. Who is all of this directed towards? The field, the perfect field, the field of accumulation, either of merit or a field of negative karma, of accumulation of negative karma. So it's the object of our actions. So here it says the two fields of the highest good qualities is the fourth and the fifth. And this, as I said, it refers to one is ordinary beings, but ordinary beings who have benefited you in a sort of more conventional way, ordinary way. And those who have benefited you, those with excellent qualities who have benefited you in a spiritual way. So it's like a worldly and spiritual fields of merit. And one, it says, like your parents, ordinary, like our parents who brought us up. So that's why also previously it referred to the importance of respect for our parents, because there's great merit in that, due to their, due to everything they have done for us, due to their limitless, or due to them giving us life. They have benefited us in so many ways and cared for us. So then consequences of our action towards them are very great. So parents or anyone who've been very kind to you in this life. And then the last of these, the fifth point, is then on a spiritual level. So our teachers, bodhisattvas, Buddhas, says the Sangha, you're taking refuge in Buddha Dhamma Sangha. Those are the 5 kinds of positive, negative actions that have great power in our life, and that we should either adopt or give up. So we should, like what Nagarjuna is saying, we should make an effort to avoid positive and negative actions, to avoid negative actions and to practice positive actions, cultivate powerful positive actions. And in that way, he says, we have great, we have this ability to direct our own karma. He says, if you recognize this, and you do good, positive actions in this way, and avoid the negative actions, then it's like, similarly we talk about a field of action as like a farmer's field. So the quality of a field itself makes a difference to the harvest. So meaning that there's powerful results in a fertile field, and not very powerful results in sandy soil. There's a field with good soil and few rocks will yield a good harvest. A sandy, rocky, dry field will naturally yield less. So if we recognize this, then our actions can become very powerful. We can have very positive, powerful, positive actions, like having a very fertile field, and we will have very good results from our actions. Does this make sense? Is this clear to you? From the Treasury of Knowledge, there's a verse quoted here, says, if you act well towards your parents, those who are ill, a Dharma teacher or a Bodhisattva in his last life, as a sentient beings, the merit you create is measureless. So this understanding of karma is what he is explaining. Any questions? So, feel free to ask whenever you have questions anyway. So he goes on to talk about cultivating powerful positive actions as antidote to negative actions. So our positive actions are antidotes and purification of negative karma. So it says, a pinch of salt can give its salty taste to a little water, but not to the Ganges stream. So you should know that likewise, minor negative actions can never change a mighty source of good. So this is actually a positive message telling us that we should take comfort in the fact that even though we may not be perfectly pure, our body, speech and mind, but through applying ourselves to the path, our positive actions are becoming stronger, and our purity is becoming stronger than our impurity, due to our application of positive actions as antidotes. So in this example here, the salt refers to negative actions. It says a pinch of salt can give its salty taste to a little water. To a little water. A pinch of salt can give it. So negative actions in a little bit of water makes a big difference, but not to the river Ganges that has so much water. The river Ganges is like the stream of virtue that Nagarjuna is encouraging us, the king and everyone, to do through the previous verse. So he's saying that if we apply ourselves to these positive actions with a frequency, great motivation, and we apply the antidotes, and we direct them to these objects of merit, then the stream of virtue is very, very great. And that we have the power and ability to create this strong stream, the Ganges stream of virtue. And in comparison to that, a few pinches of salt is not going to really pollute the whole river Ganges. It's not going to make the whole river Ganges salty, even if we make a few mistakes. So we should not be too hard on ourselves. That's how I think this verse is telling us that we're doing okay. As long as we keep practicing, as long as we keep cultivating powerful, positive actions, then that in itself is the river Ganges keeps flowing very powerfully and virtuously. You know, the river Ganges is a holy river, right? You dip yourself in the river Ganges, all your negative karma is supposed to be purified if you're a Hindu. So maybe that's why he uses that example. So compared to the strength of the river Ganges, a little bit of salt is not going to change it. This mighty source of good. Meaning, of course, a mighty source of good is us, the king, all practitioners, trying to make an effort in application to our meditation, our virtue, our generosity, our ethics, the way we live our life, the way we think, the way we act, what we do, our mindfulness, etc., our carefulness, all of that is not going to be polluted. So he's also encouraging us to apply ourselves to cultivate positive actions with strength. Not just with a little bit of attention, but with strength and with strong motivation, like I explained before in terms of karma. Even if we do a little bit of good, but if we have real strong motivation of compassion and loving kindness and goodwill and patience and no selfish intentions polluting it, no negativity polluting that motivation, no pride, no arrogance, no anger or jealousy, then we're doing really well. So here he's saying you should know the strength of karma is affected by in that previous verse, by this, and you are able to monitor all of that. So put effort into monitoring that, and then do good, and then don't get discouraged. Then the next verse goes on to explain how to avoid things that are obstacles to training the mind, obstacles to the path. So how to apply ourselves to powerful, positive actions on a very vast scale. How to give up as part of that, how to avoid the things that are obstacles. And that's in verse 44. Avoiding 5 obstacles. So the verse says, wildness and remorse and hateful thoughts and dullness, somnolence and yearning lust and doubt, they are hindrances. So you should know these 5 are thieves that steal the gem of virtuous actions. That's the next verse, so that we'll need to go into a bit further. Maybe we can sit and just try to think, contemplate these 5. When he talks about karma in the verse 42. Let's sit, because otherwise I'm not sure how useful it is. Let's sit and just consider, reflect on these 5 attributes that determine the strength of positive or negative actions. So first of all, reflect on the frequency of positive actions. Think of an action, think of a positive action. Let's just think generosity as the first of the 6 parameters. Reflect in your own life on how often, now we're talking about the frequency of the application of generosity, how often and how frequent you apply yourself to generosity in all its different aspects, generosity of mind, generosity of material objects, generosity of time, generosity of kindness to others, protection to others, help to others. So think of it in all these different aspects, and just try and reflect on in your own life. How much do you engage yourself with that? When we think of this slowly dripping tap, is your bucket filling up? Or is there just one drop and then it dries out in between each of these actions? So let me just, you sit and think for a few moments. If you think that there has been a positive frequency of positive actions or any small positive actions, you can rejoice and feel happy about it. And so then think about specific actions of generosity. And think, analyze or reflect on the motivation. Now we're thinking of positive actions. So reflect on the motivation behind your actions. You can think of several actions, several situations. What was your motivation? Was your motivation strong or was it weak? Was your motivation positive or was it tainted? So if we think it was positive and strong, we rejoice, and if we think it was weak, we set an intention to make it more powerful and also to make it more pure. You can also reflect on times where you have acted with a motivation of anger. So negative actions motivated by anger. Reflect on how, was it a powerful motivation? Was it a weak motivation? What happened in that situation? We said a few words, but we had very strong, powerful, angry motivation. So it makes those words very powerful. So reflect on it both in a positive and in a negative way, the motivation, strength of motivation. And then in terms of the motivation, we should also think of the field of the action, field of activity. So depends on the, whether the action is very powerful or not will also depend on the field of activity, whether it was any of the two powerful objects that are mentioned here, such as those who have benefited us in an ordinary way or those who have benefited us in a spiritual way, that our actions were directed towards. That makes the action more powerful. So if we've done something good, was it somebody who has really benefited us in an ordinary way or in a spiritual way? If we've done something very bad, was it someone who has was it towards any of those two fields, two objects? If we've done something negative, was it to someone who has benefited us in an ordinary way or a spiritual way? Both of these two will make our actions more powerful, and if it was not towards one of those, then it's less powerful. And then the quality we haven't looked at is the antidote, so the application of an antidote. So if we do something negative, have we applied an antidote? Have we had a regret for the negative action? Have we had a desire to purify the action? That will weaken the karma. Have we been happy about the negative action because that strengthens the karma? Have we regretted something virtuous we have done? That also weakens the virtue. So try to reflect on that for a few moments. And then just recognize how the strength of karma is affected by these different aspects, and how that gives you an ability to increase your positive karma, create virtue, great virtue, and avoid negative, great harm, great non-virtue. You can monitor your own motivation, your actions. So think about that. So we'll do the dedication and come back again at 12 o'clock. Sanam de tam che se pane tom ne nye pe danam bam che ne che ga na che balav truk pa ye se pe so le do wa sho sang jo sem jo rimpo che ma che pa nam che dio chik che pa nyam pa me pa dang con ne con du pel wa sho pa den la me sha pe den pa dang ka nyam yong la de she jong wa dang ta shen ma lu zu sa de ja ne nhớ tu san je sa la ge ba shu. Palen save lama rinpoche dage chiwa pene den shula kadren chenpo gone je sonte kusondo jing adrup sadu so sanje chedang soji chonam la Shanju badu dane chau suji Dagi jin soji be sunam ji Drola penje sanje drupa sho Sanje chudang soji chonam la Shanju badu dane chau suji Dagi jin soji be sunam ji Drola penje sanje drupa sho Sanje chudang soji chonam la Shanju badu dane chab suji Dagi jin soji be sunam ji Drola penje sanje drupa sho sem jem tam je deva dang deve judan den pa jujik dunga dan dunga jin judan dalwa jujik dungal me pe deva Mindal wa jujik nyering chadang dan dalwe tanyom jen pola ne pa jujik sem jen tam je deva dan deve judan den pa jujik dunga dan dunga jin judan dalwa jujik Dungal me pe deva dam pa dang mindal wa jujik nyering chadan dan dalwe tanyom chenpola ne pa jujik sem chen tam je deva dang deve judan den pa jujik Dunga dan dunga jin judan dalwa jujik Dunga me pe deva dang min dalwa jujik Nyering chadan dan dalwe tanyom chenpola ne pa jujik Sem jen tam je deva dang deve judan den pa jujik Dunga dan dunga je judan dalwa jujik Dunga me pe deva dam pa dang min dalwa jujik Nyering cha dan dan delve tonyom chenpola nepa che. So let's continue in the text. So Nagarjuna has been instructing the king on how the karma, how he can monitor his own karma, his own path, if he is aware of the importance of frequency, motivation, and object, like the 5 attributes and antidotes, and the objects, how we act basically, whether we can intentionally make something very strong. So now I have a question here, maybe in relation to that. It says, I found something in my bowl. That's a little discovery, a little present in my bowl. Is it good motivation if we do good action just for getting merits, is one question. It says, and is it good motivation if we accumulate merits for the sake of realizing Mahamudra and benefiting beings? Yes, it is good merit. It is good motivation. It is good motivation if we do good action, but we're not doing it just for getting merits, not just for accumulating merit. When you have positive motivation, beneficial motivation, it means that you're thinking and you're aware of the importance of merit and positive actions, and like this idea of planting something in the field. If you have no seeds planted in the field, there will be no fruits, you cannot reap anything in the future. So merit, we need to plant good seeds for the future. We need to oil our engine. We need to protect our immune system, which are all examples of merit. The result of good merit is our path becomes strong. And so, but we are doing it for the longer, wider benefits of benefiting ourselves and all beings. But we are recognizing that we have to take it in stages. So initially our motivation is slightly selfish, because it is about me, and I still have a sense of me and my importance and my path and my happiness and my suffering, but I'm also aware that, this is a problem, and I'm aware that I need to go beyond that, but I can't just jump when there's a wide chasm between me and the other side. I have to go step by step. So that's that awareness we have, but we are continuously making a motivation of, we really, really, really want to, benefit others in the future, or we really want to, at least want to benefit others in the future. We are even now not really sure if we actually want to or not. We're still saying the words, we're still trying to develop the motivation, we are still doing the training, but we are not 100% always having our heart in it. So we are gradually training, but we realize that we are training. We know that we are on the path, and we know that it's the right thing to do, because that is what the Buddha taught. We are Buddhists. That is what the Buddha taught. If we are not convinced any other way, we can convince ourselves that way through the teachings of the Buddha. So it is true that it's like, we're doing this in order to get married, in order to put money in the bank account so we can be rich. But it is not like that. It's so we can be rich, so we can share all the money with all sentient beings. That's the idea. If it was a matter of putting things, if it was like that, of putting things in the bank, then you could say, yes, I am accumulating merit so that in the future I can share all the goodness with all sentient beings, all the goodness meaning all the qualities. So you shouldn't feel conflicted about this focus on virtue and merit. It's with a longer term view. So please feel free to put questions in there anytime. And let's go on in the text then, so Nagarjuna has instructed us that because he's made us aware of how to develop positive and negative karma, merit, negative karma. So then he says, this is how you can avoid, this is how you can cultivate the antidotes to negative actions. Or this, he's talking about cultivating positive actions as an antidote to negative actions. And then now he goes on to say how to avoid things that are obstacles on the path, in particular obstacle to concentration. Because the key aspect here is how to train the mind, how to develop stability, mental stability, how to be able to settle the mind. And so he's saying that, well, if we want to do that, yes, we need to practice the 6 perfections, and we need to give up attachment and grasping to all these different things. We need to look at our actions in all these different areas and abandon everything that causes obstacles. So here, verse 44 says, wildness and remorse and hateful thoughts and dullness and yearning lust and doubt. Please know these 5 are thieves that steal the gem of virtuous actions or positive actions. So these 5 are hindrances to settling the mind. If we cannot settle the mind, then this is the reason, because either our mind is totally wild and agitated, or it's very negative, lots of aversion, or it's very dull, or it's full of desire, or it's confused. Doubt is like confusion. So it's like he's sort of saying these are the negative emotions, such as ignorance, attachment, aversion, that get in the way. Agitation, anger, aversion. Dullness is like ignorance. Dullness is indifference and desire. So agitation, I think you may all be familiar with these. I mean, you have direct experience. I didn't mean that. I meant you're probably all familiar with the 5, the list of the 5. But maybe also it's good if you're familiar, because it means you have seen in your own meditation how these things are obstacles. How when my mind is so agitated and wandering here and there, and all like a wind blowing, we can't settle. We are unable to settle. So wildness of mind, and then all the others as well. We've seen it, we've experienced it directly. They are the common obstacles to Shini, common obstacle to Mahamudra meditation, common obstacle to any form of practice. And if we can tame them, then we can actually settle the mind. So Nagarjuna is recommending the king to apply antidotes to a very distracted mind. He actually says wildness and remorse, regret. Wildness and remorse and regret. He says they are like, he puts them into one category, both regret and wildness. So wildness, he says wildness that's based on desire, which like when our mind is following objects that attract the feelings of wildness and regret or remorse. We feel sad, maybe things we have done, things we have, and maybe the wildness is towards things that we are attracted towards. So in general, anyway, it is based on desire, because the mind is grasping. The mind is grasping at these objects. And it creates a lot of waves, movements of the mind. We're trying to settle, we're trying to focus on one point, we're trying to be really calm and stable, and then based on these afflictions, the mind is wild, and then of course out of that comes actions based on the afflictions, and out of that comes karma based on the afflictions, and out of that comes suffering based on the afflictions. So that's why I say you must give up, majesty, you must stop being so all over the place. Focus your mind. Focus your mind. He says the antidote is sustained calm. Sustained calm. It's like the opposite. The antidote. But you have to try and bring that in. And he says, yeah. Maybe I'll look in this commentary here, see if there's anything more. So excitement. So as attracted by desirable sensory objects, your mind becomes excited and completely distracted. So any form of desire to objects, food, clothing, shelter, company, sensual pleasures, and regret means when you're unhappy, uncomfortable, because so this is a kind of regret where it says you don't have the things that you experience, that you desire. So it's that type of regret. It's not a regret here that where we're regretting actions we have done. It's that's why he says based on desire. It's the regret to say we don't. Why don't I have a better place to stay? Why don't I have this? And why am I so poor? You feel something is wrong and you feel bad about that. Why did I give this away? Why did I, say that or eat that or do that? Or why didn't I do that? So we regret. It's both about what we don't have and anything that robs our sense of peace. Because that's what happens when we have regrets, isn't it? Whether it is to do with what we have done, or what we don't have, or what we feel sorry about not having or not doing, it stirs up a lot of thoughts. Well, now you might think, well, before I talked about the antidotes is actually, if we have done in terms of karma, the antidote is to regret something, and as part of the purification is we do regret having done something negative. But I think here it is as a distraction. It's not as a purification where we are thinking, yes, I shouldn't have done this and I regret it and now I'm applying the method as a purification. So in our practice, in our meditation practice, then it becomes purification if we apply the powers of purification, the practice of purification. But here we basically need to recognize and bring in focus, bring in calmness, and all the methods we're familiar with to overcome agitation. And second, he says, hateful thoughts. So this is a kind of malice. Here it says, agitation of the mind that creates negative, angry thoughts. Maybe when we sat down meditating, we were not angry, but then due to this tendency and direction of the thoughts, we become more and more upset and we remember things that happened. We remember, we go back and think about all the things that we feel were wrong, and we get more and more angry. So it's based on anger, malice, ill will towards whoever we feel have harmed us. Thinking that person did some terrible things to me, that person did terrible things to my friends, or that person was kind to my enemies, whatever it is. In that way, we become more and more upset, and our mind becomes restless and agitated, and the antidote is patience. Of course, with mindfulness for all of them, but we should be patient, and we should, with mindfulness, notice the pattern, and not give in to thoughts in the first place. Not give in to thoughts about resentments, about past events, but cultivate patience. It says dullness. Dullness or sluggishness, mental dullness. That is when we feel we get discouraged, we feel down, we don't feel inspired, we don't feel inclined to practice or inclined to focus on what is good for us. So it's like we are folding in on ourselves, drawing in, the mind is sinking, and you start to feel sort of, you're disempowering yourself in that mindset with dullness and simply lacking clarity. And of course the antidote is clarity. We should develop clarity and try to strengthen our concentration, try to put more energy, more effort in our concentration, sit up in our posture. All these aspects I think you're familiar with. Fourth, it says desire, craving, lust, all the different aspects of 5 senses we could have craving for. And craving itself is also a hindrance. It disturbs the mind, antidote to, or it's an obstacle to meditation. So whenever these afflictions arise, our meditation comes to an end. Our shine, our practice, whatever we are practicing comes to an end. And here we should develop contentment. Craving, the antidote is contentment. Try to encourage contentment in the mind. Again, mindfulness, and give up attachment. So it is like enjoyment is okay, but craving and being ruled by craving is a problem where our life is dictated by it. Then the last one says doubt, indecision. Indecision and doubt. So whenever we are, or skepticism, hesitation, uncertainty, again like the mind goes in circles and we can't focus because we can't settle and concentrate. So we try to, instead we are looking for answers through an agitated mind, and we won't really find any answers through just agitated thinking, doubtful thinking. But we are, in general of course, we are encouraged to question, we are encouraged to investigate and to check and to see for ourselves, but doubt means that mindset that is so full of hesitation and lacking clarity and lacking sort of direction, where uncertainty, where we get stuck in that, and so it's not helpful. It disempowers us and doesn't get us anywhere. Instead, we are going around in circles. So, hinders, they says these 5 things hinder concentration. And that means also they hinder our application to positive actions. These same 5 hindrances are an obstacle both to our meditation and to our being able to engage fully with positive karma. It impairs our concentration. Yeah, I think that's quite straightforward. It says the afflictions are food for distraction. Food for distraction. The more afflictions we have, the more our distraction will increase. They all function to distract the mind. It says, why are there only these 5 obstacles mentioned when the teachings say that there are 84,000 mental afflictions? And here it's explained that it's because these 5 are particularly detrimental to the trainings to the 3 higher trainings of right conduct, meditative concentration, and wisdom. These 3 trainings that we are trying through the 6 perfections to apply ourselves to, they're big obstacles for that. So it's only on the basis of right conduct that we can develop pure mental concentration. And afflictions, they are obstacles to that. Sluggishness, desire, excitement, and doubt. And says the ornament for the Mahayana Sutras, then it's also explained that it says the first and most powerful obstacle is laziness. Because it prevents you from even starting to try to develop shamatha. And then the second of the obstacles is that you forget the instructions on how to do it. I mean, that's quite bad. Third obstacle is mental laxity and excitement, so drowsiness and excitement. The fourth is failing to apply the remedies. And the fifth is if you're applying antidotes unnecessarily when your meditation is already settled, your mind is already calm. So if your mind is calm, your mind is not agitated, it is not dull. If you then apply antidotes, put more effort or relax more, then you are actually disturbing the equilibrium of the mind. So that's a mistake. Okay. So then Nagarjuna goes on in verse 45 to talk about wisdom. So it talks about what one has to adopt in order to develop this wisdom. Practices, it talks about practices to attain spiritual goals. Spiritual goals, practices that are foundation for attaining liberation from samsara or higher rebirth, liberation. Doesn't matter if someone is a lay or ordained. In this advice, it's of course the king was a lay person. So all the advice is about the mind and about our lifestyle. It applies to everyone. Power of karma. So this is let's look at it. So what one has to adopt. It says, with faith and diligence and mindfulness and concentration, wisdom, 5 in all, you must strive hard to reach the highest state. As powers, these forces take you to the peak, to the ultimate. So here, what one has to adopt, he says, confidence. Confidence. Actually, faith is explained as meaning confidence. Confidence in the 3 jewels. Confidence in the path, confidence in what to adopt, confidence in the 4 noble truths, the truth of the Buddha's teachings, Dharma, the truth in the path itself, confidence in our Buddha nature and our own potential. We need to develop confidence. And they're called powers or strengths. says you must strive hard to reach this, the higher state, because powers, these forces, meaning when they are really, really strong, they will take you to liberation. And this actually relates to different aspects on the 5 paths also, when it talks about the peak and for whether we call it powers or forces. So it says the more we develop our ability, the more the power of these, the strength of these increases. So we can have faith and confidence, but we can have weak faith and confidence. We can have strong, powerful faith and confidence. We can have weak diligence or powerful, and the same with mindfulness. So here we should work on and develop real, genuine confidence in the 4 Noble Truths and faith in the 3 jewels, Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, because that's what we take refuge in. When we take refuge, Noble Eightfold Path, even if we don't understand all the Dhammas, all the teachings of the Buddha, we should try to learn and study more and more to understand them more, because with that also our confidence grows. Our strength, our confidence can grow into real strength and real power, so that it's unshakable. We don't have doubts. We may not know all the answers, but that's different. We may not have all the knowledge, but we may have real confidence through our own life experience and through our own practice, that our confidence and faith is unshakable. That's what we need in order to really, progress. That's what we're working towards as well. So here also Nagarjuna explains karma, cause and effect, also impermanence, the strength of the negative emotions, the antidotes to the negative emotions. He's telling the king all of this to also help his confidence. And then, of course, through application, then one can see the truth of it, and one's confidence and faith grows. So this explanation of karma, of how through our motivation, depending on our motivation, a small action can become very powerful. A small negative action can become very powerful. A small positive action can become very powerful. So the common example is how a fruit tree comes from one fruit, but it grows up and it grows strong and it has many, many fruits. And in that way, like karma, from one action, one fruit has many, many fruits, or has a vast effect, can have vast effects. So that we want to make sure that we develop confidence in karma and awareness of karma and awareness of the importance of this, how we apply our motivation actions, so that we direct we go in a positive direction, and our confidence grows. Our confidence grows into a strength, a force, a power. Same with diligence. So diligence is this joy in joy. Sundru is described as meaning delight in virtue. It has a sense of delight, the Tibetan word, a delight and a joy in application to virtue. Not in any kind of application. Doesn't mean, you're so delighted when you're out doing this or out doing that. Out shopping, I'm so delighted, I'm so diligent doing my shopping, I'm so diligent, I'm so happy. Yeah. It's a delight and in application to positive action. And so it implies there's an understanding of what positive action is. And that's often confusing, to know what is positive, what is negative. But we should also be careful not to discourage ourselves if we don't feel we don't completely, or we think, oh, my motivation was selfish, there was some of me in that action I did. We should not discourage ourselves from trying to positive actions, even if it isn't completely perfect. We should just continue to practice. So with diligence, there's genuine joy in adopting what is what is positive and in rejecting what is negative, related to the Four Noble Truths. That Zendru has to become a power, has to become a force, a strength. So maybe we need to look, how is my Zendru doing? How is my delight doing? How is my application doing? Is it positive? Is it strong? Is it a force? Is it a strength? So after we've gone through this, we'll sit for a few moments. First our confidence, then our diligence, then our mindfulness. Mindfulness meaning not forgetting the instructions. Not forgetting the instructions, whatever the instructions are. Whatever the instructions you are following are, whatever the instructions you are trying to apply, whatever they are, don't forget them. Don't forget them. Be mindful, be mindful. Remind yourself again and again. And whether you're in meditation, whether you're in post-meditation, meaning outside, have some element of this carrying the instructions with you in your heart, carrying the teachings with you in your heart, carrying your mindfulness, whatever form it takes. Mindful, just simply being mindful, or just simply being present, just simply being joyfully present, but joyful with mindfulness, with Zendru, being present and application to body, speech and mind. But there is that sense of you haven't completely left the path behind in between your sessions. You have to have that application of carrying some degree of your path with you at all times. You know, like you are still on the path, whether you're sitting on your cushion or whether you're out and about. But not in a heavy-handed way, then you become like a robot. You can't do anything without heavy-handedly watching yourself. But it is with mindfulness and Zendru, then you become at ease in the moment. Being aware. So we need to apply mindfulness. Carry mindfulness with us. Then we have concentration is the fourth. It says concentration. That is really Shine, isn't it? Our application of meditation. This is more to do with our formal session. One-pointed focus on whatever the focus is. Whatever your focus is, if you are doing Zendru, or you're doing Shine, you're doing Chenrezi, you're practicing gratitude, you're practicing rejoicing, you're practicing, in fact, in a session, we are practicing all the 6 perfections. It says, by simply sitting, we're practicing patience, we're practicing right conduct, we're practicing some degree of diligence and meditation and right conduct, and the generosity in terms of focusing on kindness, loving kindness. So there's a lot of virtue in that. But our concentration here, there's a concentration as talked about. If without concentration, then all of that will be weak. It will not be a strength. It will not be a power that takes us forward on the path, takes us to the peak, takes us to the top of the mountain, to the end of the path, to liberation. So it is a force that has to become a power, he's saying. Just one-pointed focus in your meditation. And then wisdom, the last one. So to know, in terms of your meditation, you have to have the wisdom and understanding to direct yourself, to balance your mind. and to settle your mind evenly in concentration. And then in post-meditation, you have to have the wisdom to know what is right and what is wrong, to know which direction to go, to know how to apply yourself, to know how to rein the mind in, to know how to, how to be, how to live your life according to ethics and according to right conduct, with all these, with the strength of understanding. So here, Nagarjuna is saying we have to adopt these 5 strengths, and we have to work on them to become real powers, become very powerful. Then we can move forward in a good way. So maybe we sit for a little while and look at these one by one. So just settle your mind first and do a little bit of shine, a little bit of resting your mind on the breath to settle. So spend a little time reflecting on your own sense of confidence in the Four Noble Truths. You could say your faith in the Four Noble Truths. And in the 3 jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. When you take refuge with Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, you're saying you have full confidence in the path, the Dharma as the Dharma of scripture and the Dharma of realization. So it means the Dharma as the teachings and also the Dharma as a path, as your own personal path of experience. And then the Buddha as the teacher and also as the nature of mind, really, the potential that we all have. So you also reflect on your confidence in your own potential, your own Buddha nature. And your confidence in the Sangha as a living sort of lineage, you could say. The living lineage from the time of the Buddha till now that keeps the teachings alive. So spend some time reflecting on these. Certainly we have confidence and faith because we are studying, we are reflecting, we are applying ourselves. When we say the Four Noble Truths, we also mean the path of Dharma, of the truth of suffering and the causes of suffering, and then the path that leads us to freedom from suffering and that possibility of freedom from suffering, which is also based on our Buddha nature. And then you reflect on diligence, the importance of diligence. Nagarjuna's instructions on being more diligent or being diligent. And then reflect on it in your own application and develop a real wish to bring this diligence, to make this diligence very powerful, to make it into a power, a strength, a force that can really benefit you. To encourage yourself to think that if I really, really apply myself, I will definitely gain the fruition of that application. Like in anything, diligence is necessary, but it has results. We can see the result of diligence in just ordinary activities in life. So in the same way in our meditation, in our practice, we also can recognize results. And so we need to generate a real wish for that to grow, this joy in adopting the positive and letting go of the negative. So diligence applies to not only our formal sitting, but to all aspects of activity, our spiritual path. So then look at mindfulness, the importance of mindfulness, the importance of strong mindfulness, of not forgetting the instructions, and how important mindfulness is both in post-meditation and during meditation. During meditation, not to forget the objects of focus, The mindfulness is what brings you back, brings you back to the object. Mindfulness in post-meditation also keeps you on track, remembering, being careful, being mindful, remembering where to focus, where to go, what to do. So again we develop this intention, strong intention to increase our mindfulness, to make it into real strength. Then consider concentration. When your mind has to be one-pointed, supported by mindfulness, concentration supported by mindfulness. So one-pointed concentration in your practice. Again, reflect on the importance of that to gain a result and to develop an intention, strong intention to increase your concentration, to make it stronger, to make it into a real force, a power, very powerful. And the last is wisdom. Wisdom that is aware or knows in meditation when one is settled evenly in concentration. That's a wisdom or awareness aspect. And the wisdom aspect that one knows what is right and what is wrong in relation to the Dharma in a deeper sense. So all of these are referred to as powers when they reach a certain stage, because they make one more clearly seeing the truth, makes one more able to see the truth, the nature of mind. And when one has brought them to completion, that's called the peak, where they become unshakable, unwavering. They become, very. He says there are actually different stages on the path. that is called heat, there's warmth. When they become powers, and when their power increases on the different levels of the path, then they're called warmth or heat, because it's like a spark starting a fire, or like the sun coming up. When at first there's a little bit of that quality there, just like when the sun comes up, there's a little bit of heat or light, and then it becomes brighter and brighter. So when these powers become stronger and stronger, this is, and you enter, then it's called, you enter the peak or the summit. It's called the summit of that particular stage of the path. And these powers give you very positive abilities. They can't be affected at that point when they reach the peak. They cannot be affected by their opposites. They're very firm, stable, and strong. It's actually said that when they reach their peak, or the highest peak, this is the last moment of being an ordinary individual. Once you have attained the path, and then you enter the path of seeing, of the 5 paths, and you become a stream enterer. So it's a very, very high level, this thing of like taking you to the peak. We are familiar with these in a more ordinary sense, but here Nagarjuna talks about it on reaching a very highest level. So I think just the last 5 minutes we'll just sit and do Shine meditation. So then please, in your meditation, apply this Sundru concentration, mindfulness, wisdom, and diligence. So again, we do the dedication and have lunch break. Sunam deye tamche sepane topne nyepe danam pamchene jegana jebalab tukpaye sepe sole dowa dowa sho shangjo semcho rinpoche Mache panam jejo chik che pa nyam pa me padam kone kondu pelwa sho palden la me shape tempadam kanyam yong la de se jong wadam Tashen malu sosa debjane nyoto sanje sala kebasho. Palden sewe lama rinpoche dagi jiwo pende den shula kaden jempa gone jesunte kuzon dujing adup sadhu so sanje chudang soji chonam la Shanju Badu Tane Chapsu Chi Dagi Jinso Jipe Sunam Ji Trola Pendye Sanje Drupasho Sanje Chudang Chonam La Shanju Badu Tane Chapsu Chi Dagi jinso jipe sunam ji Trola penje sanje drupasho Sanje chudang soji chonam la Shanju badu dane chapsu ji Dagi jinso jipe sunam ji Trola penje sanje drupasho semchen tamje Deve judan den pajujik Dungadam dungajin judan dalwar jujik Dungal me pe deva tampadang mindal wajujik Nyering chadan dan dalwe tonyom chenpola ne pajujik Semjen tamje Deve judan den pajujik Dungadan dungajik Judan dalwa jujik Dungal mepe dewa dampadam mindal wajujik Nyering chadan dan dalwe tonyom chenpola ne pajujik Semchen tamje Deve judan den pajujik Dungadan dungajik judan dalwa jujik Dungal mepe dewa dampadang mindal wajujik Nyering chadan dan dalwe tanyom chenpola ne pajujik So there was another gift in my bowl. It says, what is a good technique to practice patience when agitated? To practice patience when agitated. So I suppose it means anything else in there? No. When meditating. When agitated in meditation, I assume it means. I think I mentioned that when we are practicing, when we're in a session, we're practicing all the 6 perfections. And it's a way to look at your session and say, well, when we might feel that the session is not going so well, or when we might get a bit discouraged, or when we might think, oh, my meditation wasn't great, then we can remind ourselves that in one session we are actually doing our best to apply ourselves to the 6 perfections. So in terms of generosity, it's when you are thinking with, you're setting the motivation, compassion, loving kindness. That's like for the benefit of others. May all beings have happiness. You're sharing, that's generosity. And you are sharing the merit at the end, that's generosity. At the end of your session, you're dedicating the merit. And then sometimes in the meditations, you're imagining you're making offerings to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, for example, Chenrezig or others. So you're practicing generosity. You may not be practicing the perfection of generosity, but you're training in generosity. And then so generosity, then right conduct or patience. This question was about patience. But we say right conduct. Say right conduct is when you're using in your session, you in one single session, you are doing your very best to apply body, speech and mind to the conduct of the session, meaning you're sitting in the right posture, nobly, gracefully, diligently sitting in the right posture. You're also using your mala, if you're doing mantras, you are reciting the mantra, body, speech and mind. So right conduct is actually in your behavior during the session. There's a big element of discipline in the session, isn't there, in terms of conduct. You're not just rustling and as normal. So right conduct is in your posture. And then patience is in when during your session you start to get restless and you start to get, maybe you get pain in your knees or pain in your back, and you just very gently do what you can to ease it, but you don't give up. You put up with the particular hardship it is that is bothering you or making you restless, itchy and kind of wanting to finish the session. You need to practice patience then. That is your practice of patience. So that also means, so the question here is how do you practice patience when agitated? So when you're agitated, your agitation is most likely that you want to finish your session. Something is pulling you away from the meditation. We saw what Nagarjuna said is a desire, it's a clinging, it's a grasping mind that puts an end to the meditation. So we're looking for something else. We're restless. The mind is restless. The body gets restless. We want to get up for whatever reason. That's where you have to put up with it. Just like you put up with your pain, you stick with it. You stick with it. So that's also an aspect of patience, isn't it? We are patient because we know there's a certain time. You have a job to do. And within that time, you have that time to do your job. So you do it. Whether it's hard or easy, you do it. That's an aspect of patience. You don't just give up. So I think that's what it is with agitation. Can be physical agitation, can be mental agitation, can be both. Sometimes people really do have physical issues and reasons why they can't sit, and they may be, with longer time, they might be pacified, might become easier to sit. And then mentally, also, the more you do it, your agitation will go. The less you give in to the daydreams, to the the wanderings of the mind and bring it back, the more discipline you have at that time, the easier it will become for you. So it's discipline, patience together that will make the mind pacified, so that it becomes easier and easier. So then you have the rest, you have like diligence is also this thing that we are doing it. We are engaging. You're diligently, joyfully engaging. Your meditation has to have that element of whether joy is too big a word, but appreciation that you are able to meditate. You have found meditation. You have understood the teachings of the Dharma to mean that you can pick up this method and use it yourself to work on your mind, and it will have wondrous and amazing results. Many people, even just on an ordinary level, have completely transformed their lives through meditation. Totally. And that's what we can all do. We can all transform our lives in whatever level and way we want. So that recognition by itself brings an appreciation. I think I'm so fortunate. It's like, how was my life before I had found meditation? Maybe, when I was depressed, I didn't know what to do. When I was angry, I didn't know what to do. When things were difficult, when I had obstacles, I didn't know what to do. I just was knocked down by obstacles that came, that hit me from various directions, and I didn't know what to do. Now we know what to do. Doesn't mean there will be no more obstacles, no more difficulties, but we know what to do. We can handle our life. We can be in charge of it to a big degree, at least in charge of our mind. So that is something that we should really rejoice in and really use diligently. Diligently. So when we have that, joyful application, as it's called, that means there's appreciation, and when we have that appreciation, then the application will be much easier as well. We will not. It is not like our meditation is a chore. Our meditation shouldn't be a chore, like a terribly hard job. It should be something. So you need to learn and to learn how to apply diligence properly, so that it's joyful. So because then, when something is joyful, you want to do it. Your mind sticks with the practice. Your attention sticks. You don't have to fight so much. Even sometimes we might have patches where our meditation is not going as well as others, but still we can always inspire ourselves. So this is not something we should just expect. It comes just without any effort from our side, or without any attempt from our side to direct our mind towards that appreciation and sandhu. So diligence is very important. And then we do that when we're practicing, right? We try to do that. Then, as Nagarjuna said, we need to do it with power. Same in 7 Points of Mind Training, it talks about the 5 strengths. Our practice has to have strengths. Our meditation, our intention has to have strengths. So in order to give it strength, we need to be aware of that. We need to remember that. Like you also remember this, one of the obstacles was first laziness, second one, we forget the instructions. We ourselves need to intentionally direct our mind so that we have the best kind of meditation, the best meaning, the most beneficial kind of meditation. So strong intention to be diligent. And for that period of time that you sit down, you're going to really give it your full attention, your power of concentration. your power of faith and confidence, your power of diligence, your power of mindfulness. So it's giving us in a nutshell what we need to have. I think actually Nagarjuna is not just talking about a session, but it's giving us in a nutshell what we need to have a good meditation session. But he's talking, I think, on a much bigger level of how we need to, move from the path of accumulation to the path of seeing, to the path of no more meditation, to the ultimate level, moving through the path. So I think when he says there, take it to the peak, that's what he's maybe the king was a very, very good meditator. Maybe he was a bodhisattva or something. He wasn't just a normal meditator, a beginner meditator. But the verses can be used for anyone. And that's what he's just told us. So when the question here says, how do we practice patience when agitated? Also we saw before, one of the obstacles was agitation, wasn't it? Wildness and agitation. So we have to, and then last one here he says wisdom. We have to, and the last one of the 6 perfections is wisdom. So that means wisdom, one thing for wisdom it is that, we know what to do. So in your session, you know what to do. You have to know what to do. You have the tools. So you have to know how to use the tools. You don't just sit down blindly and go whoomph, and then go half asleep, and then wake up and, oh yes, I had my session. That was good. That was good. I feel so refreshed. Meditation really works. I had a good rest. We are meant to actually be applying these aspects. We are meant to, during the meditation, to stay focused, to stay alert, and with wisdom to know, as he says here, we have the mind that discerns whether your attention is settled evenly in meditation, whether your attention is clear or not. It's sort of a mixture of, I guess, mindfulness and wisdom, understanding. But we do know that if we are sluggish and drowsy, we need to put more effort in our posture, and we need to open our eyes wide, and we need to open the windows and cold water, anything you got to hand, put a fan next to you, anything that will help you to stay clear. So that's part of effort and diligence and wisdom. You're using your intelligence to know what you can do to improve your meditation according to all the instructions you've had, and then to apply them is very important. So wisdom, we try to really use it now in our meditation. So, of course, like concentration is we are one-pointed with the object. Did we go through all of them? We said meditation, there's a concentration he mentions here. Concentration, mindfulness, the 5th parameter, and the 6th parameter is wisdom, is what he also mentions, Nagarjuna. So wisdom is also, knowing, understanding the instructions, and knowing why we are doing it. What it is we're trying to accomplish with a meditation. We need to know and understand the path to some degree. So not being blind in the process is a part of it. All of these, and I think all of these things, they tie together. And we need to, if we have a difficult session, we need to look at as much as we can at all of it, and just to remember as much as we can and to apply as much as we can. Then we might start to feel like, oh, I'm actually getting a grip. I actually now know how to bring myself out of distraction. I know how to turn my mind back. I am the rider. I am the boss. The horse is no longer taking me off in the wrong direction. So that's like a wonderful thing. So we'll continue. So this is what Nagarjuna has just advised us about wisdom, about what one has to adopt. Pardon?
Generosity. I missed that one in meditation. Can you repeat that?
I don't remember what I said. About meditation?
Yes.
What I said about meditation?
And generosity, the first.
Sorry, it's gone. It's gone. Dedication, in terms of the session, yeah. Yeah. Generosity is, you said your intention at the beginning, motivation, and you do the dedication at the end. In all the sessions it's like that. And then in some sessions you have extended focus on generosity.
Okay.
Like when you're visualizing making offerings to all the Buddhas. Yeah, that's also an aspect of generosity. Okay, let's continue. 46. Verse 46. It says, I am not beyond my karma, the deeds I have done. I'll still fall ill, age, die, leave my friends. You should think like this again and yet again. And with this remedy you will avoid all arrogance. So Nagarjuna is saying that actually if we manage with the previous advice to bring these 5 aspects, 5 forces, to make them into powers, if we manage to bring them, what he calls, to the peak, or really to have some real result from our practice, if we manage to really make progress in this confidence, diligence, mindfulness, concentration, wisdom, it says, oh, be careful. We might start to become a bit full of ourselves. We might start to get a little bit carried away. We might start to get conceited, arrogant, proud. At that stage, on the path, and I think he's talking like a very long path, then he's saying, there is still opportunities for afflictions to take over. And one of the afflictions when things are going well, things are really progressing, there's good signs. Say, in the previous it talked about the different signs coming up, such as heat and light, and I mean not literally, don't think of it as literally light, literally heat, but these are terms to mean that experiences become stronger. And experiences meaning your understanding of the nature of mind, reality, your meditation, your clarity will be increasing, your clarity increasing. So it's like the sun, and light comes more and more. He says, it talks about different levels called heat, summit, forbearance, and the supreme level of Dharma. So different levels as we move on the path. So meaning that he's talking about from the beginning up until the very advanced level. Yeah? And on that path there's real change, there's real shift, there's real understanding and recognition arising. So alongside with that there might be a shadow of conceit and arrogance. And for that reason, we should remember that we're not beyond karma, we're not beyond sickness, we're not beyond death and dying and losing everything we have. He's saying basically that. Remind yourself of this again and again. That is an antidote to clinging to self and to our own accomplishment, our self-importance. Of course, the Dharma needs to be a method and an antidote to clinging and to ego clinging and to self-importance. But as you move onto the path, as the obstacles and afflictions become subtler and subtler, finer and finer, then it can be harder to observe and to notice. So he's warning about that. He says when we have progress on the path, we risk this. Yeah, that's what he says. With this remedy, avoid all arrogance. Because I am also fallible, I am also, liable to impermanence and all of that. Okay? As you should think, you may be getting close to the path of seeing, meaning seeing nature mind. But that is no reason to be full of yourself. Think about your nature. You can still become sick. You age every moment with every breath until the moment you stop breathing and die. There is no possibility of avoiding death. It could happen at any time. Not only that, but you also have so many problems in your life. You're always facing the possible loss of those you love. You don't want to separate from friends and relatives, but you will have to at some point. You don't want any connection with those you do not like, but those situations fall upon you like rain. You want happiness. You don't want misery. But neither of these depend on your wishes. You have to experience the results of whatever karma you have created in the past. There's no way to get out of that. This is your nature. So when you think like this, there's no basis for arrogance to arise. So this is from another commentary by Geshe Söpa Rinpoche, on the same, called Nagarjuna's Advice for Buddhists. So it's an explanation of a letter to a friend. It's a longer commentary. It's really, really good. It's quite in-depth. So then going on in the text, it says, now it talks about the right view. Nagarjuna is advising the king to make sure he adopts the right view, to the right attitude to his spiritual practice. He says that is the basis for all lasting happiness. He says, if higher birth and liberation, freedom is your goal, your quest, you must become accustomed to right views. Those who practice good with wrong views will still experience terrible negative results. They will be reborn in a cycle of existence of suffering. So here Nagarjuna is saying, watch your mind, look at your understanding, look at how you see things, and you have to constantly try to remind yourself of the laws of karma, cause and this result. And he says that if we live according to karma, cause and result, that will be the cause for a good rebirth. And if we live act with wisdom is like understanding non-duality, understanding no self. If we have that, if we truly have that understanding, that's a cause for liberation. But if we don't, and instead if we believe in permanence, we believe this body is who I am, we don't have regards for cause and effect. We don't have regard for rebirth or a sense of continuation of cause and effect. He says, then we will be reborn and we will continue that what he says, you'll experience terrible results, meaning you will continue in a cycle of existence, of suffering. So wrong views, meaning a belief in maybe like this idea that, yes, our body is who I am. Only my body is what is real. This is what I identify with. And also, like we say, eternalism, nihilism, meaning that things are either permanent, existent, truly existent of their own accord, or nothing exists at all. Nothing has any relevance. So karma, cause and effect, nothing has any consequences. See, they are the worst views for a practitioner. Denial of causality. So denying the connection between causes and results, resultant experiences, both in the world and the environment, sentient beings, etc. That's called nihilism. I think there's no why or what's the point? Just live life and do what you want, and that's it. It says that the ultimate right view is that everything lacks inherent existence. But like meaning its appearance and emptiness. It has no existence of its own accord. It comes together due to causes and existence. So things appear, things are there. It's not saying that they are not there. It is saying things definitely appear. Definitely there is all of this happening, but it's happening because of causes and conditions coming together, and by themselves, in and of themselves, they have no independent, real, solid existence. There's nothing there to call this and that, and then to be attached to and have aversion to. There's no independently existing thing, object, but we continue to be so attached and fixated on appearances and objects and developing all the afflictions related to that. So that's the idea, like appearance and emptiness is the right view, we say, the right understanding. There's the right view of reality, and also this proper understanding of causality, of cause and effect. And then you have the review of ultimate reality, of this appearance emptiness. But just doesn't mean there is nothing there. And on a relative level, as we are acting on a relative level, we need to act according to cause, karma, cause and effect, because we are affected by it. Once we have the ultimate view, once we have attained the ultimate result, we go beyond karma, because it's like waking up from that dream, waking up from a dream of confusion. So as explained, like in terms of in terms of the opposite, it says that the worst view, the most harmful view for a practitioner at the outset of the path, at the beginning of the path, for a beginner, the worst and most harmful view is nihilism. So the eternalism means all things, they intrinsically exist of their own accord. They have reality of their own accord. They don't exist they don't appear just because of causes and conditions. But so for a beginner, this nihilism, where you are, it says you are in denial of causality, of cause and effect. Nihilism denies the connection between actions and results, and believes, for example, that only the body is real and the mind is just a quality of the body, and when the body dies, that's the end. So for that reason, if you have the nihilistic view, you think, well, there's no need to really practice the Dharma. There's no need to really look long term. Whatever seeds we are planting in this life doesn't matter too much, because I'm doing well, I'm doing fine. Nothing can really hurt me. So you just live life, enjoying life in a sense, to the best of your ability. You don't engage in positive actions. You don't try to do good. Maybe if you're a millionaire, you can see how that could be possible. You just live on that. And so it's said, even if you have that view of nihilism, that's also why it says those who practice good with wrong views will still experience negative results. Because if you have that view of nihilism, if you have that strong belief in nothingness, then even if you do good things, like we looked before at motivation, what it means to have motivation, how important your motivation is, it will weaken the goodness of your actions. Because you will have limited motivation. Your motivation will be very limited. So that's this verse 47, and he goes on to talk about the next verse that says the right view that leads to lasting happiness. 48, is it? 48. So he says, you should know this truth, that men, that means like humans, are ever sad, impermanent, devoid of self, and impure. Those who do not have close mindfulness, their view 4 times inverted or wronged, they head for ruin. So this is like a reflection, or talk about reflection, the 4 aspects of mindfulness: mindfulness of body, sensations of feelings, selflessness, and this aspect that life has these 4 qualities of suffering, impermanence, impurity. And Nagarjuna is saying we should develop these. We should consider these to develop renunciation. We should consider the 4 mindfulnesses, the 4 types of mindfulness. So mindfulness of the body, mindfulness of sensations and feeling, mindfulness of the mind, mindfulness of all phenomena. To understand that in fact humans are suffering, they're impermanent, they're without a self, and they're impure. Those who have not established these 4 recollections, they hold on to the 4 wrong views and they suffer. So that's where, according to Buddhism, this is the samsaric ordinary life has these 4 qualities. I mean, it doesn't. It's here about developing renunciation, reflecting on the, suffering and samsara, and he's saying that if we don't recollect these 4 consistently, then we always see things in the opposite way. We always sort of see things through ignorance, see things through attachment, through like thinking our body, our feelings, our mind. They're like always looking for pleasure in those areas when their basic nature is impermanent and suffering. So we think that impermanent things are permanent. We have a view of strong clinging to a self, And we think that our body and possessions are very wonderful and beautiful and attractive. So I guess it's not really a very you could say, uplifting contemplation. But what the teachings are saying is that when we have these wrong views, afflictions arise, attachment, aversion, as usual we are familiar with that, due to not having the right view, due to not being aware of suffering, the truth of suffering as well, Four Noble Truths, due to not really having taken in and accepted or truly taking to heart the truth of suffering and then impermanence. If we truly had assimilated the teachings on impermanence, we would be much more diligent, isn't it? Like you see when people go to the doctor and they're told that they have, an incurable sickness, incurable illness. Everything is suddenly seen in a different light, because then you really know things are impermanent. You believe the doctor, but we don't really believe the Buddha yet. We haven't quite accepted what the Buddha says. But we do believe the doctor when he says, 6 months, a year at the most. And suddenly we go, oh, my bucket list, what do I have to do? All the things that I haven't paid attention to my whole life, now I have this much time. I must pay attention, I must do it, I must really. So our priorities change. Our values change. Suddenly we kind of realize what is important and what is not important to us. And we will all have different values. Everyone has different values. But as Buddhists, I think we will have we will want to live with a clean slate. We will want to have good relationships. We will want to have kindness, and we'll want to have done our best in situations, and we want to have some understanding and stability, inner stability. We'll want to have some understanding of the teachings of the nature of mind to the best of our ability. I don't think for most of us it would be, we want to go to Alaska or see the seals for one last time. But who knows? We never know. But it certainly it sobers us up, isn't it? It's like getting a cold shower. You're like, oh. But this Buddha has been telling me this all the time. Things are impermanent. My life has been ticking away. And talking about impermanence, death and dying, yes, I know it could be any time, but so we Nagarjuna is saying, if we really need to pay attention to these four mindfulnesses, and to, if we don't, and to having the right view that really helps us to develop stability and happiness, and overcomes the wrong views. The fact of self, like who is it that is dying? Who is it that is impermanent? We have always learned that the Dharma is about understanding selflessness and coming closer to seeing this nature of no self, no duality. So we need to think about it. We need to take it to heart. And if it is that we know that we are impermanent and we are eventually going to die, or tomorrow going to die, or next month going to die, then we think, well, who is it that is going to die, since there is no one there in the first place? This is an illusion, it is a confusion. So who is so afraid of dying anyway? And who is so caught up in attachment and aversion as well? And then we recognize this fourth aspect of impurity. Impurity, I guess, in terms of the aspect of our body, general characteristics of our body. So meditating on these different aspects, or reflecting on these different aspects, is what Nagarjuna is recommending that we do. He says if we don't take this to heart, then the opposite, instead of the four mindfulnesses, we will have these four wrong views of permanence and purity and etc., holding on to all the things that are not going to really give us happiness in the end or during the path. So Nagarjuna is telling us, be mindful, be diligent, be aware of these aspects of our life. Not to a point where we become depressed. It's not about depressing ourselves or feeling discouraged. It's about seeing our clinging to things that are actually clinging to things that are impermanent and unreliable and doesn't give anything in return. So then he goes on to, we want to today also to do some reflection. I wanted to. So the next verse says, form is not the self. So this is about like looking. The previous verse looks at the part of it, but then here he continues, like investigating the no-self of the individual. It says form is not the self. So reflecting on this no-self. Previously it was like impermanence, impurity, suffering. But here he has a verse specifically for no-self of the individual. It says form is not the self. The Buddha taught this. And self does not have a form. It doesn't control form, it doesn't have a form, nor does it dwell on a form. While form itself also does not dwell on the self. So in that way you should see the aggregates. And in the same way you should see the four remaining aggregates are also empty. So just like form is empty, you should see that the other four remaining aggregates are also empty. So here the Buddha is talking, and the Nagarjuna is talking about the aggregates, but here investigating where is this self? Where is this self that we hold on to so strongly? There's an aspect of wisdom as part of developing this quality of wisdom or the perfection of wisdom. We need to come to the understanding of no self. So he's saying, look for it. So the wisdom is the recognition of no self. The wisdom is the wisdom is the recognition that holding on to the five aggregates is a mistaken view. Holding on to the five aggregates. So we say that ignorance means that we take on face value the five elements and the five aggregates, and then the emotions, the negative emotions, the five negative emotions. We believe in them as very strongly. We identify with them as this is who I am. The five aggregates is form. So he mentions here the form is the first of the aggregates. Next is feeling. And then you have perception, mental formation, and consciousness, or what we say, the 5 aggregates. So we as human beings, we are under the illusion that this is who I am. I am the 5 elements of my body: earth, water, fire, air, and space. The 5 elements, together with the 5 skandhas, the 5 aggregates, 5 skandhas, 5 heaps, and then also the 5 negative emotions. So these all very, very smoothly interact with each other in a seamless way that gives us a sense of solidity, that gives us a sense of identity and clinging. And of course we sort of need our sense of self right now. We cannot just, we don't want to let go of it yet, right? We need our ego. We need our ego at this stage. We need our identity. We cannot, you're not meant to go from one to the other extreme. It has to be that gradual waking up process and purification process. But that happens through also understanding and seeing how it works. But so we should think that, well, ego can also be quite helpful at times, isn't it? Ego and the aggregates, the way we react to things around us can be very helpful. So I thought that today, if we have time, we just maybe need to reflect on these aspects. I will guide you through a little bit, so we have a little bit more familiarity with these. Then when we come back next time, we'll continue in this this verse of the aggregates and the explanation of the aggregates, because this will continue for a little while of how to come to that understanding of selflessness. So how it works that we fixate on the different, the elements, the aggregates. So the elements are part of the aggregate of form. So it's really how we are fixating on the 5 aggregates, and how we are then believing, how they give us a sense of permanence and solidity, and how this permanence, and how also it gives rise to then the afflictions, the emotions, the whole cycle of it. So it's quite simple in a way here. We can continue it next time. But so let's do that. And you place yourself in meditation, you settle your mind into Shine for a few moments, and then we'll look at this. So first of all, well, no, you first you sit for a few minutes. First sit for a few minutes, and then I'll talk you through it. So first of all, we reflect on how everything is composed of the 5 elements. That means both our body and things external to us, So we divide it into internal, external. We depend on the elements, our whole existence relies on the elements. Our food, our clothing, the environment, our health. So think of the earth element. Just reflect on how externally it is the ground we walk on. It is the solidity of all the external aspects. It's not just earth. It is the solidity in things externally. And then internally, it's the firmness and the solidity of our body. So it is the firmness and solidity of all external objects, as well as the earth itself. And it's the firmness and solidity of our body. And think about the water element, how externally all the lakes, rivers, oceans, rain, moisture, how it makes up a big part of life. And internally, it's all the fluids in our body. Not just water, but all the different fluids in our body. The liquid. So think both of it externally, internally. They're the same, not different. And then think of the fire element. Externally it is real fire, heat and warmth. From the sun, from any aspect, but both real fires, we know it, and simply heat and warmth. And then internally it is the heat, warmth of our body, our digestion, everything that is related to heat and warmth in the body, how it functions. That's the fire element. Without these elements, our body doesn't function properly. And then think of the air element. Externally, the wind blowing, movement, growth, any form of movement. And internally, it's the air we inhale and exhale, and it's also our growth and the changes in the body. All the different changes that happen, the movement within the body. This is the air element. The hair growing, movement of all different, the movement of our body in general, the movement of our food through our body. And then consider the element of space. So externally, the sky, space, anywhere that enables things to appear within that space. And internally, it's the space in your body that makes it possible for the other elements to exist. So reflect on the fact that all these 5 elements all depend on and interact with each other, forming what we call our bodies, and externally forming what we call things with various names. We all look differently, but we all consist of these 5 elements. Our bodies all consist of these 5 elements. We talk about my body, your body. We see them as separate, permanent, individual. We protect our body at all costs, fixate on the existence of a self based on the body. To reflect on your body in terms of it's not permanent, it's not separate, it's not individual. Our body as such is made up of the 5 elements. It's a conglomeration of the 5 elements. So when we reflect on the 5 aggregates, or the 5 skandhas, the first one is the aggregate of form. So we reflect on the fact that forms appear due to causes and conditions coming together. Conglomeration of these 5 elements, all visible forms and appearances, shapes, the various things we see, sense. They come about due to the gathering of many conditions, both externally, internally, my body. I think that none of these have any substantial independent existence. But due to the different aspects coming together, we give it a name. And it meets with the 5 senses, our form, our body, in terms of our own body. And then we also develop feelings towards this form. So the aggregate of feeling is a basic reaction. Whatever we sense or feel, it's like we have a radar. The aggregate of feeling is like a radar with our 5 senses. Described as the meeting of the mind and the body, enables this feeling of pleasant or unpleasant, happiness or suffering to arise, likes and dislikes. So the aggregate of feeling is a basic reaction, almost immediate reaction to the aggregate of form through the 5 senses. There's the bond that ties us through our basic reaction of like and dislike when we encounter anything through the 5 senses. Through sight or sound, touch, taste, feeling like a touch, taste, hearing. So all the forms that we're exposed to immediately, the aggregate of feeling arises, this reaction. Through our 5 senses, we label it when we encounter something. But again, when we examine it, it has no true reality. Form, whatever form it is we react towards, it is again a conglomeration of different things that have come together and that will eventually fall apart. So we could have an example of form. Form could be fireworks. Fireworks. Then the aggregate of form is the fireworks, and the aggregate of feeling is very loud and maybe unpleasant. And we react to it through the 5 senses. Could be something else. It could be music. Somebody's playing music and it may be very pleasant. It could be reacting through any of the 5 senses, smell and taste, sight, sound, smell, taste and touch. So try to reflect on how quickly we react with a judgment or likes and dislikes through our 5 senses. And then the third of the aggregates is the aggregate of perception, or sometimes called recognition or appraisal. It's sometimes confusing, they may have different translations, but it's mental judgment, where we judge it as good or bad, or beautiful or ugly, or right or wrong. This might please me, this might harm me. So we feel it's like ego-centered. So we hear the fireworks, it's loud and unpleasant, and we think it might hurt me. I start to pull away because I think it's going to come in my direction and harm me. So there's fear or aversion. Fear and aversion arises. Or if it's pleasant, maybe the opposite. Attachment arises because we think this is something we want. So craving arises towards what we find pleasant, and fear towards what we find unpleasant. But because our assessments are ego-centered, you could say, then it is mistaken. It's often mistaken. The fourth of the aggregates is mental formation or impulse. Impulse relates to concepts, with the impulse to take action. So say the fireworks, it's loud and unpleasant, is the aggregate of feeling, aggregate of perception is it might harm us, it might be dangerous. And then the aggregate of impulse or mental formation is that we jump up and we rush to hide. So in an ordinary sense it can be useful. But in terms of this belief in a self, it feeds into the ego-centered belief in an I. So here it means we're trying to avoid what we think is unpleasant, to get what we think is pleasant. So this impulse to take action, and relates to concepts about our experience. So on the basis of our feelings of either desire or fear, or craving or fear, then there's this impulse to take action, and that leads to accumulation of karma. So this aggregate is said to be the architect of samsara, because this is through our impulse to take action based on attachment and aversion that we create karma. So think of this, how the mind works. We hear this loud sound, fireworks. We feel threatened, it might harm us, we feel fear, we jump up, we rush to hide. Or we feel see something very nice, very pleasant, develop attachment towards it, we like it, and we act on impulse to grasp it. Then the fifth of the aggregates is consciousness. So this refers to deluded mind, not a clear mind, but it's a mind that dwells on past memories, present, future possibilities, and all the mental activity, thoughts, that thoughts that cling to the aggregates as truly existent, clings to pleasure or runs away from pain. So it's like a filing system of past, present, future possibilities and experiences. We are filing things according to our past experiences of fireworks, maybe, We know we were harmed in the past, so we get really terrified. So the 5 aggregates are explained as and this is how, this is what is meant by ignorance, is this very, very, very quick, almost like immediate, it seems like immediate responses from one to the other, to the other, to the other, of these 5 aggregates. This gives us a sense of I am, my body, aggregate of form, my body. I want to protect my body, and of course we should look after our body, but in terms of this build-up of attachment and aversion, clinging, and also action, impulse, and suffering, is based on this mistaken belief in a solidity where there is no solidity. Actually, it is very, very, very fast formations one after the other. It says wisdom is a dissolution of this clinging and confused belief in a permanent self, in a permanence where there is no self, where there is no permanence. So when that strong holding and belief in these 5 aggregates, it dissolves, then that's the wisdom really arises. Or we dissolve them into wisdom, they're transformed into wisdom. That understanding of no self. But just knowing it is not enough. So we need to have awareness of this and changing our habits, of course. Develop self-awareness. And it shows us if we consider the aggregates, it shows us that we can't base our lives on our feelings, fleeting moments, fleeting moods, fleeting emotions. That we need a better foundation. We need a foundation of mindfulness, awareness. Of course, also all the positive qualities of kindness, compassion, appreciation, etc. But especially a foundation of mindfulness. And not to base everything simply on feelings and emotions. So in this verse then Nagarjuna goes on to talk about the aggregates. And he says the aggregates are different. See. The aggregates are not the self. We cannot find the self in the aggregates. It says form is not the self. So you have to look for self within that form, the aggregate of form. Is my body the self? Is really what you're meant to look for. This body of mine, this form of mine, is this sense of self that I have, where does it exist within this form? Of course, we have just been told the form is not the self, so we know that, yeah. But still we have a sense of, is the self the same as a physical body, or is it separate? Or is it neither of the two? If they were identical, then whatever happens to the body would happen to the self. And that's not the case. So if there is a single self, is the nature of that self? Is it the nature of the aggregates, such as form, feeling, etc.? Or does it exist as something else? So here we say, Buddha said, form is not the self. Body is not who I am. The body disintegrates, elements dissolve. It's impermanent. So he says, if the self was equal to the aggregates, it must be a multiplicity, since there are many aggregates. Talk about 5 aggregates. Or we can think, does the self use the body, the aggregate of form, as a support? As like a shepherd and his sheep, or like a vine and a creeper and a tree, a vine and ivy that creeps up a tree. Does the self simply rest on form and the other aggregates as a support, in the same way that a person is either related like a farmer to his cattle, or an ivy, a creeper that climbs up a tree, resting on the tree? But so then it says that the self does not possess form, like things to be controlled, doesn't possess form like the cattle of a farmer or like the creeper on a tree, because we can see form, but we cannot see the self. So in this way we can analyze, we can look for the self. So so then he asks, are the aggregates different from the self? And here, so a different are the self and the aggregate separate? It says that the self cannot dwell on form and the other aggregates, because if that was the case, then the aggregates being impermanent, then it would follow too that the self would be impermanent. So is there an impermanent self existing? Surely not. This form does not dwell on the self. In the same way that creepers are not supported by the earth, because aggregates taking the support of a permanent self could never perish. They would become permanent. So it's like he's using logic through this. He's saying this is how we should investigate form. Like relating to things, whether they're permanent or impermanent, out of form. Form is impermanent. So if the self was relying on the form, permanent form as a support, it says their birth and destruction would depend on the self or the other way around. But this does not happen because outer forms are, one can conceive of the creation and destruction of outer forms without a self. So it says this is how we should investigate form. It's not easy to really get one's head around it, but we should investigate all the 5 aggregates and say where within the 5 aggregates is this self that I so strongly believe in, that I so strongly have a sense of. Logically we may not believe in it, but we have a strong sense of self. So maybe we'll continue this next time to see if we can become a bit clearer, because now we're running out of time. So just sit for the last 5 minutes, just sit and meditate, do shine. Rest your attention with mindfulness, with concentration. So just to summarize, we looked at the 4 samadhis, and we looked at the post-meditation, positive and negative actions, cultivating positive actions as antidotes to negative actions, avoiding things that hinder concentration, and then in terms of wisdom, what one has to adopt, and what one has to abandon, and then developing the right view, which is what we are in now, developing the right view, giving up wrong views. And we got to verse 49, so we'll continue there, and it continues talking about the aggregates in some of the following verses, so we'll do that next time. So let's do the dedication. Sanam deye tamje sipane tobne nyepedanam pamchene jegana jevalam trupaye sipe sole dowa dolva sho shangcho semcho rempoche ma che panam je jo che pa nyam pa me padang kone kondo pelwa sho palen la me jape ten padang kanyam yong la de she jong wadang da shen malu so sa de jane nyo tu san de sa la ke pa sho. So please try to think about these 5 aggregates particularly, and the points about karma, and try to keep them in mind, what Nagarjuna's advice was about karma, these ways we can shape karma, and depending on our intentions, our actions, object, and then think about these 5 aggregates. And we continue next time. Okay, see you then.